yarny friends. Well, it is 9:30 a.m. Mountain Time in Colorado, Parker, Colorado. I live south of Denver in a town called Parker, and so it's Mountain Time. Now, I get a lot of questions about if it's 9:30 your time, what time is it in my time? So the best way to find that is just to Google it or search it and say, I live in Dacron, Ohio, or I live in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and it's 9:30. What time is it in Parker, Colorado, or the opposite? And then you'll know what time it is in your area to watch. Now remember, this is filmed live on the Posh Pooch Designs Facebook page. 9:30 a.m. Mountain Time. Just about every single Tuesday, unless I'm out of town or sick. And even when I'm sick, I still try to push through. So anyway, once we finish our video here, I tweak it up, make sure I take out things that I say that are really silly. Or sometimes I call it getting my tongue tangled instead of my tongue tangled. When you're live, sometimes things come out not the way you meant for them to be. So anyway, then I shoot it over to YouTube because I love my Facebook friends and my YouTube friends. Well, welcome, welcome, welcome. I am Sara Sach, and this is Coffee and Crochet with Sara. I have a table just full of things I want to talk about and show you. But the first thing we need to do is our clink in. So, who's with me today, peeps? Are my yarny peeps out there? Because we're talking yarn today. I've got my iced coffee today because it's going to be about 90 degrees, and that's super hot in my area. I know it's hotter in other areas, but that's super hot. One really cool thing here is we don't usually have very much humidity. So, let's clink it in. That says Rise and Skein. Yes, that is a ball of yarn. All right, clinkety, clink, clink, clink. All right, so the first thing I want to do is our shout out. And I was going to pick a different person, and then I got to looking at their YouTube channel. As much as I love their YouTube channel, they hadn't put anything out in 2 years, and I thought, well, I want to do shout outs to people who are working hard right now and really trying to grow their YouTube channel. And so this person, I've known her through some of the crochet channels and groups for a while. And her name is Maria's Blue Crayon. Isn't that a cool name? It doesn't say crochet in the title. And so sometimes when we have a channel like mine's just Sara Sach, that doesn't have crochet in the channel, sometimes they get skipped over because we're searching for crochet or yarn. Okay, this lady is amazing. She does these little squares, and then she does crochet alongs where they do all the squares and put them all together. And she's just really nice, and I really, really like her. She's probably young like my daughter. She looks younger than 30 maybe. But she does an amazing job, very sweet. And she has one of those voices that's easy to listen to. All right, I already posted her link for her YouTube channel on the Facebook page on Posh Pooch Designs. Now, I will link it like I always do underneath the YouTube video in that information box. I'll post her link there as well. Go encourage her. All YouTubers need encouragement. You know that? We all work really hard for very little pay, but it's because we love what we do. Okay, and she does, and you can tell she does on her videos. But still, tell her I sent you over there. Let her know we're pulling for her and we want her to succeed, because that's the kind of person that I am. I don't view other crochet channels or crochet podcasts or any of that stuff as competition. I don't view it that way. I think we're all in this great big thing working together to further our craft and our art of crochet and yarn. Okay, that's the way that I look at it. I don't see it as competition at all. Okay, and so what I like to do is encourage other crochet and YouTube yarny channels to let them know we're watching, we care about them, and we want them to succeed. All right, that's Maria's Blue Crayon. I think that is so cool for a name. Okay, all right, make sure you subscribe and like and watch her videos. All right, so that's our shout out for today. Now, the next thing I wanted to show you is my cardinal, and I'm going to grab it up here. Remember a few months back, this wonderful lady, let me look at her name again, make sure I say her name right. Her name is Tammy Chevalier. I probably said it wrong, but she made this beautiful cardinal with beads. This is not diamond dot. This is individually sewn beads together. Okay? And I couldn't figure out how I wanted to hang it up. I tried a couple options, and I didn't want to put it in the window because I didn't want the beads to get faded by the sun. And so I went to Hobby Lobby, and they made this frame. And it's a black frame with 2 pieces of glass, and then it's attached between the 2 pieces of glass. Isn't that beautiful? She sent this to me, and it was one of the times that I needed some encouragement, and it came at just the perfect time. And if you're listening, Tammy, thank you so much again. This is going to sit on my piano. I have several other cardinal things up there, and this is going to sit on my piano so everyone can admire it and see it, okay? I love cardinals. I've talked about that before. I probably should have cleaned that glass a little better. I see a smudge. Anyway, I wanted you all to see that. And it's really a sturdy wooden frame with 2 pieces of glass that are attached on the back with like a sticky thing, but you can peel it off. And then 2 pieces of glass, and it holds it in place. It's just beautiful. I looked at several frames, and I didn't want to put it on a mat because when you look at this, you can see the art of the sun coming through those beads, and it's just really beautiful. Okay, so anyway, I wanted to show you that until Tammy, I got that done. And thank you, thank you, thank you. Her and my friend Rita that works in our group did that as a surprise for me together and didn't tell me, and I love, love, love it. Okay. Okay. All right, now, we're going to talk a little bit about yarn labels, okay? So I'm going to switch over to this other camera. I'm going to move my paper over here so that you can see exactly what I'm talking about. I've got a couple of things of yarn here. Move it over here. And the reason we're going to talk about this is I've gotten a lot of questions about how to read labels on the yarn. All right, let me move this up a little. I just have a couple that I have. I have a lot of yarn. And I wanted ones where the labels were white so we could read it really well. Now this one that I have down here, this is a Karen Big Cakes from Yarnspiration. Now, a lot of people ask me, when I'm looking for yarn, what should I look for? Okay? And the first thing you should look for is, what is the yarn made out of? What's the fiber content? And like this one down here, it says 100% acrylic. This one, you have to kind of look for it sometimes, but it's very important to look. Okay, so this one says 100% acrylic. This one does too. They're all 100% acrylic. That's important because if you're making a washcloth that calls for cotton, these probably won't work unless you're going to use it as a decoration. And so that is very important. The next thing to look for is a dye lot. Not all yarns have them. And you'll usually find your dye lot somewhere near your UPS or your scan label. Okay, so here's a number. It doesn't say it's a dye lot. Some yarns, especially acrylics, may not have a dye lot. And because acrylic, when the dye is put in, is at a different time than, say, a wool yarn or a cotton. It's done just a little bit different. But when you're ordering yarn, a lot of times when you order online, your dye lots won't match. I wanted to show you this one. This one has a dye lot right there. And where you can look for that usually is near your UPC label, your scan label. The die lot is usually near that. See here, we got some numbers up here. And when you're ordering online, sometimes it's difficult to get your die lots the same. But when you're in the store, you know, even if it's acrylic, make sure your die lots are the same, because any little tiny difference, I mean, this is like an off-white. Well, if it was a little lighter, just a shade, or a little darker, it would ruin it, especially if you're making a solid colored blanket or something. All right, so that die lot is important. The next thing is the suggested hook. And I do get lots of questions about, do I use the hook you suggest in the pattern or the suggested hook on the yarn? Now, where you'll find that is they have these 3 little boxes usually. You'll have the weight of your yarn, knitting needle suggestion, and your swatch suggestions. And then you'll also have crochet hook. This one suggests a 5mm, which is an H. And then it says a 4" by 4" swatch is 12 single crochets by 13 rows. And that's if you want to make a swatch. And I've shared with you in the past, I don't always make a swatch unless I'm going to make a blanket or something big where it's very important for that gauge swatch. Usually I measure as I go. For a hat or scarf, I'll measure as I go. All right? So this one, it's set up just a little bit different. You've got your yarn weight here, and here's your knitting information. And then it says 5mm US H8, which the 8 is a US number. And our American crochet hooks, we have millimeter, we have a letter, and usually a number. Some of them don't, you know, like your, I think 7mm is just a 7mm. There's, for some reason, they didn't assign it a letter. Okay, but you've still got your same information. And this is important information if you're a designer, especially, but this is my recommendation. When you're working a crochet pattern, I don't always use the recommended crochet hook size. So I would, when you're working a pattern, use the crochet hook size that the designer is recommending. If it's coming out too big, you go down a hook size. If it's coming out too small, you go up a hook size. So keep that in mind as well. I tend to be a little bit looser of a crocheter, and a lot of people will go down a hook to maybe 2 hook sizes, and that's very important because you need to measure as you go. Always keep your tape measure handy. I say this all the time, and I have these everywhere. Don't make a whole hat and then get frustrated because it's too big. Start your hat. If you're measuring, it's coming out too big. Taking out a couple of rows is much better than taking apart the whole hat. All right? So, fiber's important. The weight of the yarn is important. The hook size. And then the needle recommended. We didn't talk much about the weight. And what the weight refers to is this little square here. It's not how much it weighs. It's the thickness of the yarn, basically. Medium number 4, medium number 4. These are all medium number 4 yarns. You have a chart, and I'm going to show you this real quick. If you want to go to the blog, you can find this chart, and it just lists all your weights of yarn. And now there are 2 more. There's a 7 and an 8. There's like a super duper bulky and a super mega bulky with those great big thick yarns. And when a pattern gives you a recommendation for a weight of yarn, it's important to use that weight of yarn that they recommend. Now, sometimes you can, if you're using a medium weight number 4 and you don't have that, you can put 2 together and form that medium weight number 4, holding 2 strands together and things like that. But I get the question all the time, can I use a 3 instead of a 4? But what you need to understand is if you go down a size in your yarn, it's going to come out smaller. If you go up a size in your yarn, your project's going to come out bigger. So it is really important to use the size that the crochet pattern calls for. And we'll talk more about that later. The last thing I wanted to show you on our yarn label are these right here. And you can, if you don't know what all those means, you can look it up on the Crochet Guild of America. You can also just go to the garment section on YouTube and find also what they all mean. But I'm just going to give you a quick rundown. This first one has to do with how to wash it. If you can wash it in the wash machine, if you can put it in warm water, things like that. The second one, let me see, mine's out of order from this one. Let's see. 1, 2, there's the iron. That tells you if you can iron it or not. And that's important because a lot of times you might make a garment and it's not laying right. I always suggest to never iron anything using acrylic yarn at all because you will melt it. I suggest getting it damp, stretching it over your bed or over something flat. Like if it's a great big blanket, you can dampen it and lay it out flat, like I do mine over my balcony, like that, rather than ironing it. You just should never ever iron it. Okay, and then you've got symbols for if you can dry clean it. This says not to dry clean it. And acrylic yarns really should not be dry cleaned either. Wool can be, of course, and I do dry clean some of my wool hats. Also, after winter and I've worn some of my wool hats, your head sweats a little, so I'll send them in the dry cleaners along with my husband's shirts. Okay, this one I believe has to do with bleaching. And the truth of the matter is, I don't really know ever when you should bleach any yarn at all. Unless you're trying to get a color out of like a wool or a cotton, you might want to bleach it back white. But really, a lot of these things, should be, in my opinion, kind of common sense. But if you don't know, you can go to the Crochet Guild of America, and you can also go to the garment section and look up the garment symbols, I think, what all the symbols mean, and they'll give you, there's like a huge amount of list that you can go by. Okay, so when you're going and shopping for yarn, I don't always go looking for specific colors or types. A lot of times I let the yarn speak to me. I might be in a store and it's got tons of beautiful yarns. And I'm always drawn, for some reason, to the striping yarns. I love them. A lot of people don't care for them, but I love them. There's so many things that you can do with them. And the other thing, if they have colors that you really like, you can take those cakes apart and roll it into separate balls if you want to. And I've done that before, where I have 2 cakes that are the same. And I want to make a scarf and a hat, but I want everything to be even. And so I'll take it apart, I'll cut the colors, I'll roll it into separate balls, and then I can decide how I want that hat and that scarf to be striped. Only I'm using these colors because I really like it. So that's one of those things. It's just kind of a preference, I should say, whether you like the big thick striping yarns or not. I do. I love them. So that's what you should look for on your yarn label when you're looking. I'm gonna read through it one more time. Your fiber content, your weight, which is your light 3, medium 4, the hook, and also if you're a knitter, the needle recommendation, if it's the color that you want, and of course dye lot. Dye lots are important. And then the last thing, of course, is washing instructions. And I'm going to tell you what I do. I rarely ever throw my crochet stuff just in the washer and dryer. What I do is, if something needs to be washed, like my dog's blankets, get washed once a week or so, and then I rotate them out, okay? What I do is I put them in my wash machine. I put it on gentle cycle. I use about a half of one of my little, I use Free and Clear, which has no dyes because we all have allergies at my house. And so I'll use about a half of one of those packs, depending on if I'm doing several blankets or just 1 or 2. And then I'll put a tablespoon of white vinegar. And the white vinegar works kind of like a purifier in there, and it helps it get soft, and it helps it come out really nice. Then I do not put them in the dryer unless it's something that it's going to be one that's just going to be thrown over their little poof or their bed or something. But most of my blankets, I don't put them in the dryer. I take them out to my back deck and I hang them over to dry in the sun. And if it's a rainy day, I have a table. If you watched the how to make tarn yarn, not tarn, yeah, t-shirt yarn. That's the area where I'll lay them out if it's raining, because I have a pretty good sized deck. I can do that. If they're smaller rugs, I'll just drape them across all the chairs around the back and dry them outside. It's just my preference. And the reason that I do it that way is because I look at it this way. I've worked really hard to make all these blankets or whatever I'm washing, and I will do whatever I can to make them last as long as they can. And that's just my way of thinking on that. Okay, I'm going to answer a couple more questions real quick. I got this question this week. Can I substitute one yarn weight for another? And no. If your pattern calls for a light number 3 and you use a medium 4, it's going to be different when it's made up. It's going to be bigger. Now, you can do that if you're great at adjusting patterns and measuring, but I'm not going to rewrite a pattern for you if I've designed it in one weight and you want to do it in another. You're welcome to try it, but my suggestion is try your best to use the right weight, or not to say the right weight, but the weight that the pattern designer has mentioned or instructed you to do in that pattern, okay? Because it's going to mess you up. It really is. If you're using a light number 3 for a pattern that's a medium weight 4, again, it's going to come out a lot smaller, all right? All right, so the next question is, can I substitute one yarn fiber for another? And that really depends on the pattern. A lot of times I will make my dishcloths in cotton or my hot pads in a cotton or cotton blend. But if I'm just going to use it for a decoration, I'm just going to hang up those pumpkins or something, I'll go ahead and use an acrylic as long as it's the same weight. It really depends on what you're going to use it for. All right. I always tell people never ever use acrylic on a hot pad or pot holder that you're going to take something out of the oven and set it on, because that's going to be hot and it's going to melt that hot pad or pot holder. The other thing is, if you're using a hot pad to pull something out of the oven and you're using acrylic, you're going to burn your hands. And so that's why I always suggest using cotton. And if you're going to make it into a hot pad, do 2 layers so it's nice and thick and can protect your hands and your surface. You know, something like a coaster, if you're going to use it to put like a glass of iced tea and that's going to have that condensation, make it out of cotton so it can absorb that cotton. But if you just want to protect your surface and you're going to put, like, say, you know, a cup of coffee or down, then acrylic is fine. It has to just kind of be what you're going to do with it, okay? So then the last question is, can I substitute one yarn brand for another? Absolutely. You know, there's tons of yarns that are similar in colors, just as long as you're using the right weight that comes with the pattern. What did she say? Can I use 2 yarns to make the weight? Yes, you can. And I was talking about that earlier. And actually, I'm going to talk about it when I talk about my pumpkins in just a minute also. If you want to have, say, a chunky number 5, but you don't have that, you can use 2 strands of a light number 3 held together to equal a chunky number 5. If you've got a chunky or bulky number 6, you can use 2 strands held together of a medium 4, and it comes out approximately the same. And I say approximately because we all know that some medium number 4s come out thinner than other medium number 4s. And that's something you're going to have to take into consideration when you do that. Now, substituting yarn brands is perfectly fine, and I mix them within projects all the time. You know, as long as it's the same fiber and the same weight, it doesn't matter. If they're calling for Red Heart Super Saver in a cream and all I've got is this one, but I want to make that, it's the same weight, similar color, I'm going to use it rather than go out and buy, you know, exactly that other thing. And so that, excuse me, I got a tickle. And so that is totally fine to, you know, change to change yarn brands and mix yarn brands. Let's say you've got a beautiful purple and Red Heart Super Saver, and then you have a solid and a green, and you want to use them together, you certainly can. It's totally up to you. You know, if I wanted to mix this And this, I could. They're both acrylic. They're both medium weight number 4s. And it's just, yarn brand is kind of up to you. One thing to keep in mind, though, is because like a Karen's Simply Soft, it's 100% acrylic, but it feels completely different than, say, this one that's 100% acrylic. This one's more like a Super Saver, even though it's an impeccable. Okay, so you have to keep that in mind as well. All right, so I hope that answered some of your questions about yarn and yarn labels. It's kind of funny. It kind of goes in kind of a rotation. Sometimes I get more questions about yarn, and sometimes I get more questions about hooks, and sometimes I get more questions about something else. And so even though I've probably answered these questions in the past, I wanted to kind of do a refresher and talk about it a little bit more. The best thing that you can do to make your pattern come out correctly is try to use the same weight that the designer is asking for of yarn, the same crochet hook size that your pattern designer is asking for. Those are the two things that will help you succeed. And then once you get used to doing some of that, you'll be better able at measuring as you go. And this is something I tell people all the time. This will save you miles and miles and miles of frustration. It will. Measure as you go. You know, I don't always do a gauge swatch. You know, you can if you're more comfortable doing that. I don't. I would rather, you know, measure it out and keep going. Okay, so the pattern says it's going to be 14 inches wide, and it came out 15. Am I going to freak out? No. All right, so let's talk about what's new this week at Posh Pooch Designs. And that's what I was going to talk about. We did these pumpkins. This is with that cotton blend from Lion brand. This is a red, white, and blue one. This one is orange and green. And this one is a 3-stripe with 3 colors. Now, this is a bulky or chunky number 5. It's a cotton, has those little bumps, super cool. Now, if you don't have this cotton, don't freak out. In order to get this look of this yarn, because it is basically 2 strands spun together, you can use an off-white or a white and then a solid color held together and get this same effect. All right, so these are super fun. It's a new pattern and YouTube video, and I just went out in my yard and picked up some sticks for the stems. Now, a lot of people use cinnamon sticks, and I love them, but guess what? I'm allergic to cinnamon, so I can't use them. But they do look really, really cute. The other thing that we did for Friday Fun was the the little flip-flop keychains. They're super fun. I love doing them. Put them on your backpack or your purse or your beach bag, and you'll always know which one's yours. We did that on Friday. And this Friday, I'm really excited about, we're going to talk about dryer balls. We're going to talk a little bit about which yarn works best. I'm doing a test right now. Hang on 2 seconds. All right. I'm doing a test right now to determine which yarn works best for dryer balls. This one is acrylic. Actually, all 3 of these are acrylic. And I made a cotton one as well as a wool. And then I'll tell you on Friday Fun, how to make a dryer ball, or I like to have 3 in there because they bounce around and work great. But which I'll tell you which yarns work best and which one worked best in my dryer in my test, okay? So I'll be looking forward to that for Friday Fun. And then yesterday, I'm going to click over to my roaming camera real quick. Yesterday, we did the update of the Colorado Sunset Wrap Shawl. This is just a really neat project. It comes out as a big rectangle, and you can wear it as a cape like that, as a shawl, as a scarf. You can even wrap it around your waist as a cover-up skirt. It's made with this yarn that I showed you, the Karen Big Cakes. The name of it is called Toffee Brickle. And I love this yarn because it has lots of fall colors in it. And then I also love the blue and the gray in there as a good contrast. And this yarn is wonderful to work with. It is a medium 4. And it only takes about 7 ounces. But it's super easy to adjust the size. I've got all the measurements and multiples on the blog. And it's just super easy. You can make it longer, wider if you want to, and you can make the length longer this way if you want it to be longer. So it's really basically just a big rectangle with a tie at the top, and it's just super versatile, and I think it's something that a lot of people will really, really like. So yes, it's called Toffee Brickle. Oh yeah, Rita says, that sounds tasty. It does sound tasty. All right, and so that's the other thing that we did this week. I know that's a lot of information and a lot to talk about. And so I hope that you will go to the blog. You'll find the charts. I don't remember what to call those things. The charts right here. And I'll also put a link to the Crochet Guild of America where you can find more information on these charts. If I can get in there. I'm not a member anymore. I'll let my membership kind of, I didn't pay well, I haven't been a member of the Crochet Guild of America for about 3 years. It's kind of like once COVID hit and all that stuff, I just sort of let some of those extra things go. Oh well, but I'll find you the link for those if you want to go and just learn for yourself, because I think we should always be learning and growing in our craft and in our art. All right, so that's all I've got for you today. I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful week, and I will see you next week.